So that sounds like you guys are fully convinced that we will have a nice season.
We are.
We are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
You
good
want to
to
make
hear.
a bet on that?
So here at Bol, what we organize specific day, invite all teams working here to really test the services they are managing.
Financial side of it is also a really interesting and important factor of doing this.
Well, I think Google will like it. I think they're a fan.
maybe not. We have two guests here, Marcel and Nithya. Maybe it's nice if you guys introduce yourselves. Ladies first.
Yeah, I can go first. I'm Nithya. I have been working with Bull for 9 years now. And I am working as a test engineer in checkout product. And before that, I used to work for the logistics. Marcel?
Yeah, so I'm Marcel. I'm working at Bol for now about 6 years. Working currently in SRE, so site reliability engineering. Previously as a backend engineer in logistics.
Really cool. Welcome, guys. Awesome to have you two here today. And we're going to talk about performance testing today.
Yeah.
I think a really cool, really interesting, especially with the season coming up now, really interesting topic and really important for Bol, of course. So really happy to have you as experts here today.
Yeah. And as always, I was happy that you explained the abbreviation SRE because not everyone knows all abbreviations. And also the season. With the season, we mean, of course, a very busy time for Bol. We have the holidays, Christmas, Black Friday, and all those things.
Yeah.
Extremely heavy loads are expected. But if I look at you, you guys are looking relaxed. So I don't think you guys are worrying a lot. What is the secret, guys?
Yeah, I think we have a well plan, how to do the performance test and as well as how to tackle the season. And I think we also have a good plan from SRE where every year we do the chaos engineering. And also we make sure are we season ready well beforehand, before the actual season starts.
It's really cool, right? I mean, it's, we're recording it quite early. It's still September.
Yeah.
Paper note already downstairs, of course, at the Albertijn, and we're already starting with the season. Is there a reason why we're starting this early? Is it really that, that needed, that crucial?
I think it is. It's always you have to be prepared, and there needs to be time. If you find things wrong, to properly fix it, test again, and make sure it works flawlessly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. And it's also really cool, probably, where chaos engineering comes in.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Doing chaos engineering really helps because you create a chaos up front. You have a look at the system before the chaos just happens to you, and you have to deal with it during peak times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how does it look like chaos engineering? What are you guys doing?
So here at Bol, what we are now, especially one before the season, we organize specific day and invite all teams working here to really test the services they are managing. And the whole idea is bring chaos to your system. So instead of letting it happen, you're the expert in your system. You bring chaos to it and really look at what's happening. Learn from, can it deal with it? Can it deal with, performance? So can it deal with load? But also can it deal with some outage? We saw some big outages, in the news recently. We need to be able to deal with it as well.
Mm-hmm. And we actually, a couple episodes ago, we talked about this with Rogier. And you really explained how big the size of Bol is and what kind of problems that also brings. And is that something that also, came into this chapter of performance testing on really big scale of Bol?
Yeah, I think yes, because in the olden days, we used to do the integrated performance test where you have to tackle with 10 different dependencies of yours, and you have to make sure every service is working correctly to run your performance test. And also you used to get compliance that you are loading their system with a lot of data. So that used to be there, but now we are more towards isolated performance tests. So we are trying to avoid all the dependency issues, and like we try to mock our dependencies and run our performance test to make sure only our system is performing correctly. And do we have fallbacks in place? For example, as Marcel mentioned, like when you do chaos engineering, we also have to make sure like our system can handle when there is an outage. And if there is an outage, we need to have a proper fallback where like we intimate the customer in a proper way, or we make sure like at least our basic order processing is going still fine, even without any big features in our website. So those things are really the focus of us now. And like we try to avoid all the dependency issues right now.
Yeah. Does that introduce any issues when introducing the isolated testing?
No, when we do the isolated performance test, it's more reliable and also reproducible, because you know, like if there is in first run of your test, if there is an error or something, you can recreate that and you know where it is exactly going wrong and you can fix that. Say if it is a database issue or if it's like something with your service itself, like with memory or CPU, like it's easy to reproduce. So there is no, there is no issue like if you do an isolated performance test. It's like more like giving you confidence, and also like everything is in your control.
Yeah, that sounds great actually. And do people experience it as having confidence because they used to test with everything, of course, and now it's with mocks and isolated? Do they still experience it as, okay, we have mocks, so we still have the confidence like we used to have when we did the complete system test?
Yeah, the mocks part, like actually like there are multiple ways like how you can tackle or build your mocks. Like for example, like how we do is like we try to create it with our dependency client library and use it. And I think Marcel can talk about contract testing here, because like that also gives confidence about the mock you build. Maybe you want to pitch in?
Yeah, I can. So it's indeed about being in control, isolated. That's really nice because you are in control. And also you already mentioned the downside is you making assumptions. Because you mock things away, and with that you will have an assumption that it works in a certain way. But that's also where, for instance, contract testing comes in. So instead of really having assumptions, you talk with everybody that consumes your service or you are consuming their service, and really define like a contract. What can I expect both functionally and non-functionally? So can you deal with this load? Can I perform 1,000 requests per second or can't I? And in that way you already have some ideas on, well, where are the weaknesses? So what do I want to test? And again, then chaos engineering comes in. We know, it could be a weakness. Let's put stress on this part of the system.
Yeah, that's really cool, because just going a couple steps back, because I'm really curious to make it really, really the concept. Because if you, for example, look at the web shop, or we look at some sort of the app, because that's probably the first thing people think about if they look at Bol, and we put a giant load on that one, you just see, okay, what will the website do whenever we put a really cool action live? Of course, what we discussed is we have a lot of microservices, which currently, if I'm not correct, some of them are still not mocked. So how do you see that transition from trying to mock the performance test to the current scenario that we're having? Because I think the mock isolation is amazing, especially I think the biggest prerequisite from doing good performance testing. But how would you do that on scale? Because I think a lot of microservices nowadays don't have these mocked services applied to it yet, right?
Well, in the end, for each service, it's in control of its own mocks.
Mm-hmm.
So are there contracts in place everywhere? No. But it's easy to start with your service and what's in your control.
Oh, that's cool.
Start defining the contract, maybe even one-sided. I expect it to work this way.
Mm-hmm.
And you can gather the data, for example, by performance testing.
Wow.
You see, well, I expect so many requests. What do I need from the dependencies I depend upon?
Yep.
For example, like if you use, you can also use your metrics and monitoring to know like what your system is doing, even if you do a performance test in an integrated environment. But the benefit, like why we say more isolated test, is like you can also tweak your dependence. I mean, when you mock your dependencies, you can also say, hey, I want my dependency to be this low. So I need to know how my system is working. And you also want to test, like, say, if your dependency is throwing like continuously 500s or 400s or errors, like then like how my system is going to handle that. Like those benefits are more, and like it's easy for you to know in real time what will happen. And if you don't have that isolated test, if you're relying only on integrated test, I think more metrics can play and help in this place.
That's really interesting, because does that mean that you are able to really emulate the real behavior as like integrated tests within your mocks? When you put random behavior on, okay, now for 10% of the request we're throwing 500s, and now it's really slow, and now it's doing good stuff. Is that what you're...
Yes, that's what we do.
Oh, wow.
Because that's where like you really know, like during the season or like in any time of the year, like how your system can perform, because you know like if your circuit breakers are opening up or not, are they closing properly, and like do you have fallbacks. As I mentioned, like you have to show a proper message or convey proper message to your customer, and that's where like we have to do all these tests.
And maybe to add to that, also if you're doing really an integrated test on your whole environment, you're only testing one scenario. So that could be the positive case if everything is behaving correctly, but you're not in control of one service that is down, because then you need to involve that team, get the services down. And by isolating it, you are in control. You can just test, well, how does my service respond when this is down or that is down, or maybe the database isn't working.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, and especially like looking back, I think it really has, like, both of them have benefits, whereas I feel like integrated tested has benefits you don't actually want on theory. For example, indeed, if you put full load, almost chaos on like the web shop, it is nice to see, hey, this upstream service in the landscape is not scaling correctly. So that's a nice benefit you will get. But of course, it will be way nicer with the example you just gave on when everyone is in control of their own services, they know what the load is going to be, they know what the SLOs are that they, well, communicate with the upstream teams, that you can really benefit from it as well. So super awesome initiative, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's also hard to organize that with integrated testing, that everyone is ready to do that, because you know everybody's working on development and stuff, and you know timing wise it's also a challenge. So how did you roll out this initiative, like the things like the chaos day or the new ways of testing to the organization?
Yeah, I think everyone feels the pain in the team as well nowadays. So that's one thing like where people are eager to take up new initiatives and work on. And also we have this horizontal tech initiatives. That was like one of the way, like at least we as a group, we formed for performance testing. And we try to talk to different teams, like how they are doing currently. And like we try to talk to them, hey, we have new ideas, like are you ready to pick it up? And that was one way like we rolled out like the ideas to different teams and like to see if they can do it. And apart from that, like SRE team is doing like the Chaos Day, arranging them every year. So maybe you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so in the end, it's about a few things, right? So one is being motivated. Do you want to do it? Well, we have the season coming up. It's not hard to understand what the importance is. So setting this is rather easy, and making it fun. It's the holiday season, so making it fun is also really easy. And then another one, of course, understanding. We do a lot of tech talks. Well, we're here.
Yeah,
we do a lot of talks here, helping teams out. It's also part of what the SRE team does. If there are questions of teams, we can help them out with them. Not only performance, but the whole reliability part. And then a last part of the puzzle is making it easy. If it's hard to do, it's hard to change your ways. So we try to provide tools and documentation to really make things easy for teams. So we have been talking to teams, adapt to what they are already using. So making a small change is always easier than making a big change, right? So really making, actually shrinking the change you need to make.
Mm-hmm.
And then smaller steps, having the knowledge, having the motivation, then things start to click together.
Yeah, and did you hear like one of the biggest burdens from them? Well, what their reason was of not adopting? Because you mentioned you had a lot of talks with them. Is it really like the hate-driven development of, oh, we were so annoyed that our service got down every time, so we went to the mocked environments?
Actually, for me, it was one of the reasons for this HTI that Nithya just told, so the horizontal tech initiatives, to join them, and really playing the devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
So as a team, why wouldn't I want to do this? So we come up with some, say, bottlenecks, so excuses on not to do this. For instance, well, how do we deal with databases? For us, yeah, load is nice, but actually the database is always the issue. And you just tell me mock it away, but what am I testing then? If I mock my bottleneck away, then what am I gaining here? So we really came up with some ways of, okay, if this is your bottleneck, how should you deal with it? Maybe performance testing isn't the right way. Maybe it is. In this case, still test in isolation, have your database, but make sure your data in there is relevant and you hit the bottleneck that you defined. So we're also really creating documentation and kind of tips on how can you deal with this.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
Yeah, sounds like a great action plan. Huh? I like how you started from feeling pain to making it easy.
Yeah. Yeah, as you mentioned, like especially for me, like it was like in our checkout, like we have to deal with all payment providers, third-party providers, and you don't know, like sometimes like you cannot really rely on everything from them. Like even though we have like the SLO agreement or the SLI agreement with them, like sometimes it doesn't go like that. So we have to make sure like we are really resilient and like we are doing and performing well. So that's where like we had to come out from the integrated environment to an isolated environment and think of like how to deal with our problems.
Yeah. Talking about this now, there's actually a colleague also working in logistics, and there I heard that it's a fun story. They did a performance test as well a couple seasons ago on staging. However, some of the logistics accounts are sharing for the external parties, such as, for example, PostNL. They're sharing the same environment for staging and production. So what they did is they put a really high load on staging environment. And what happened is PostNL thought, hey, something weird is going on, so we're going to rate limit you guys, and we're going to put you on a blacklist. So the second they started performance testing, out of nowhere the connection broke, and they were like, "Oh, what's going on? Why out of nowhere we're not able to do any requests anymore to PostNL?" And of course, it was fixed in seconds with a short call. But these things are really showing the pain of not having like mocked integrations and really not thinking of, okay, what happens if we put so much stress on the systems?
Yeah.
So it's really fun to see these really easy examples resolving a lot of chaos actually.
Yeah.
So as experts on this topic, do you guys have tips? Because I feel like lots of, maybe also bigger companies deal with the same issue.
Yeah, I think there are quite a lot of challenges when you do performance or like when you want to know your performance. Like for example, like you need to tackle your database properly. Like if you have queues, like you have to tackle them. And if you have like cron jobs running like parallelly within your service, like that is something you have to tackle. So, and also like the first tip I would say is like you need to first know like which tool you want to use. Like because if you know like the tool very well, like the performance tool what you're using, then it's easy for you to maintain your performance test. And it's not like only at the end of the season, like or like during the season, like you run your performance test. It's like every year long, like you can have your performance test running in your integrated pipeline. So you know like when your system is changing in performance, like when the dip is going. So that's one thing like I would say. So it's like the tool you choose that's important. And then like it's also important to understand like if your database is a separate entity you want to do or like you want to include it in the performance test. And also it's not like about like the load of the database. It's like the variety of data and the distribution of data that is important. So that's something you have to keep in mind. And like how you want to scope your performance test, like what functionality and what percentage like you want to test that functionality in your performance test, that's important. So I think these three things, like if you keep in mind, and then you can roll on.
Yeah, it's super helpful, I think. Marcel, anything to add from your perspective?
Well, at first, if you don't do it at all yet, I would say start with it. Tools, really, it's good if you're familiar with it, you can do it fast. But even doing a manual test on your service is better than doing nothing at all. So really start small, and maybe just on a Friday afternoon that you have not much to do, spin up something. There are lots of free tools that you can use just to start putting some load on your system somewhere, maybe even on your local system. Start with it and learn from it, because in the end it's all about getting to know your bottlenecks and getting more confident that your system will withhold with whatever is happening.
Yeah, great tips. Great call to action as well.
Yeah.
But as we recently moved to the cloud, so performance testing, why can we just scale up if the load is getting higher at some system?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So just, well, you can say just start scaling horizontally, right? So, we don't have enough. Spin up another pod, maybe another one and another one. I think there's still something to be said for that. But there's another constraint here, which is money. So I think everybody who also played around with this and at some point had something going on, and maybe in this Friday afternoon, it's fine, work with it, and then leave it there, come back the Monday afterwards, and then just find a little bit of a big bill. Because suddenly you got a lot of hits, it spun out of control, and then in the end you just lost a lot of money. So I think what happens here is that the focus that we had before with performance testing and we did the integrated environment was really about, can we handle the load? But now it's really more about controlling the load. So maybe we can scale out, but if we're spending more money than we will be making with it, what's the point? So it's really about being in control and know what's happening. And that's also a side effect. If you test and you're good, maybe you recognize, well, we're over-provisioned. We always run on 4 pods, but we can do with 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. That financial side of it is also a really interesting and important factor of doing this.
Well, I think Google will like it. I think they're a fan.
maybe not.
So if you start with contract testing and isolated testing, you really start defining what is my service doing. Sleek and slow, so service level indicators and objectives can really help with defining what can you expect from my service. And that's actually usually a very good question to ask, because in an integrated environment, things just organically grow and we just make assumptions. And this really puts us to put the question out there. What should I expect? And start talking to people that are consuming your service or you're consuming their service. And this is really beneficial because that really helps prevent all kinds of issues that just accidentally happen because it's a big network, right? So we have hundreds, if not thousands of services. So assumptions happen all over the place. And just by talking to this team, they become aware, you have a big need, so maybe I need to scale up as well, be prepared for that. But I have dependencies as well. So then throughout the whole organization, you get the right discussions going.
Yeah. And regarding the SLIs, SLOs, do you see that teams change them specifically for season, or do they keep the same numbers and really work on scaling?
What you at least should be doing is keeping that, because the expectancy of the indicator, or actually the objective, is what we define as what works good for the end customer.
Yeah.
So if we say for performance, it should be the website should be displayed within a second. Then during season, it still should be displayed within a second. Availability, it's not like that we lower our expectations during season.
Yeah.
If anything, it would go up, right?
No, I agree. But of course, there's a distinction between dropping maybe your availability because you're not able to stand up against the thresholds or the SLEs, the SLEs that you pointed on, or you're decreasing on latency. But I fully agree. It will be the best to keep them the same and really test on if we can scale properly.
We revise them every time. I mean, in the sense, like we recheck, are we in control with the same SLA and SLO with our dependencies? But we also have like metrics and, as I said, like monitoring, right? Like, so when we are not in the range, we have alerts triggering. So it's not like during or before the season we recheck them. We also see throughout the year, like when things are changing, like we try to tackle it. So we try to make, for example, like you mentioned, like if it should be within a second, like the page should be loaded, like we make sure like it is still there in control. Mm-hmm. So I think that's not only during the season, it's like all through the year, like we do it.
Yeah, awesome. So it's really part of the full development cycle, I would say. Because does it mean that every service does performance testing whenever a new feature goes live, or how is this integrated at Bol?
Yeah, it depends. Like if it's a major feature, like of course we do a performance test, but like if it's smaller features, as I said, like it's not really something we do in our culture, or like it's not like that. But like we do have the performance test integrated in our pipeline, which runs like every day and like every week. Like we have the schedule runs, so we can see the changes if something is happening.
Yeah, cool. So that sounds like you guys are fully convinced that we will have a nice season.
We are.
We are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
you
good
want to
to
make
hear.
a bet on that?
Well, given the past years, I'd say yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I like the confidence.
Yeah, same. I can now safely close my laptop during season.
Yeah. Well, in the end, that's the goal, right? So that's always the running joke here on Black Friday. Every team should be there, just looking at their dashboards, sitting there with their legs up on the desk, just comfortably looking at how all the sales are going smoothly. So
yeah, but that, I mean, if we are able already to simulate the season right now, then we shouldn't have any surprises anymore, right? At that point in time, only nice gifts, I hope.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, super cool.
Yeah, I think it was a very interesting talk.
Fully agree.
Relevant during this time of year, I would say. Yeah. And I also like the lessons learned, how you guys approach it, but also the tips you guys gave.
Yeah, and I think it's a really cool initiative that you guys have been working on. So thanks a lot for all this heavy lifting here. And thanks a lot for joining us here today. I think it was super cool.
Indeed.
Yeah, it was nice having a chat about this topic.
Yeah. So if you guys want to learn more, especially for the listeners, of course, about performance testing, we will definitely put something in the show notes to show even more. Maybe some cool blog posts that we can share. And we would love to thank you for tuning in again today, and hopefully for the next one. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.